Hi everyone. So if you're not already aware, Mercury is now in retrograde in the sign of Leo, and he will be in retrograde up until the 11th of August when he stations direct in Leo. Of course, Mercury is joining the planetary retrogrades of the time because we've already got Pluto in retrograde and we've got Saturn and Neptune both in retrograde. For both those planets, of course, Saturn and Neptune, they're going to be retrograding back into the sign of Pisces as part of their retrograde, going over that cusp point, which I've spoken about many a time. So the theme of endings and beginnings continues. Now, Mercury's retrograde, of course, he's going to remain in Leo. That's fine. But what this retrograde is asking us to do, if we're looking at it as a general message for the retrograde, is to introspect when it comes to our expression. Mercury, of course, can symbolize thoughts, communication, expression, as well as technology as well. Okay, and this is why it gets a bad reputation, because there can be technology blips and things like that going on during a Mercury retrograde. But essentially, it's about that introspection in terms of where we might be holding ourselves back within our expression. And particularly because this is happening in the sign of Leo, of course, that's calling for the courage and for us to show up, to be seen for who we are, that authentic soul expression. So are we holding ourselves back? Are we limiting ourselves in terms of our expression? Do we need to speak up in terms of what we want to pursue, or any other aspects where we might be detaching from certain situations, especially with the theme of endings and beginnings that I mentioned? So with astrology, as always, we look at the bigger picture. We look to see what else is going on. So it's important to bear that in mind. And of course, this might not even resonate for you on your journey. So if it doesn't, that's fine. Leave it for somebody else, of course. But if it does, then you're going to know this is very, very transformative period with many shifts, many pivots, many intensities going on. And of course, the planetary energy is there to help show us how we can align with the energy in order for us to maximize it for our highest good on our journey. Okay, so what's important to do is, if you can, look at what's going on against your chart and how that is going to play out for you. Of course, these are collective messages just to give you that general insight, and I will pull up the chart to show you what I've been drawn to. But let's rewind and just refocus on the retrograde and the introspection in terms of our expression, and where we might not be speaking up, where we need to find that courage, where we need to get our thoughts in alignment. I was going to say in aligned fashion, but in alignment with what we're trying to pursue, the change that we're wanting to see and experience, the new reality that we're trying to create for ourselves, and so on. Okay, so let's pull up the chart. We'll dive into it. Okay, and let's see what we've got. I know that there's a yod. There is a finger of God. So bear with me whilst I just pull up the chart. Okay, here we go. All right. So this was the moment that Mercury stationed retrograde in Leo. And this happened for us in the UK. It was the 18th of July at 5:46 a.m. So for some of you in the world, it's going to have been on the 17th. Okay, so it's important to just apply your time zones as appropriate. I did put a post up on social media, so it's a bit of a delay really in terms of my YouTube video, but I did put the post on my Instagram just to give the key points of this chart. Okay, so you can see here that with the red numbers, that's indicating retrograde. Okay, so that was the moment that Mercury stationed retrograde. And many things that I was drawn to in this particular chart, but of course there's other stuff going on. These are just the insights I was drawn to. So we've got, in terms of challenging energy, we've got a square that is going towards Juno and Poseidon in Scorpio, and we've got a sesquisquare that is going across to Neptune and Saturn, both retrograde, both in Aries at the moment, and both side by side, as you can see. So challenging energy is going to come from what is being shown to us. What is under the veil that Neptune is showing us? And Saturn, with his lessons, okay, really trying to show us through lessons and tests, what we need to understand. So those two are working together. So we need to use our discernment first and foremost, because that is, pivotal during a Neptune retrograde, and understanding that we are being shown things that could have been hidden from us, or we might have been hiding from ourselves. When we look at Mercury retrograde and the things I mentioned about, are we holding ourselves back in terms of expressing ourselves or in terms of our expression generally, then perhaps what's going to be revealed is, yes, we have been holding ourselves back. We've been sabotaging that side of ourselves because we haven't felt worthy, or we haven't felt courageous enough, to use that other Leo theme. And that's what's potentially going to be revealed. So it can indicate, as a theme here, for the start of the retrograde, it's sort of indicating, there could be some minor challenges with what's going to come up as part of the introspection. So we mustn't be too hard on ourselves with this, because it's coming up to be revealed for a reason and for our highest good, to understand why it's coming up. So it's going to show us where perhaps we need to be more bold and courageous in terms of our expression. And certainly when it comes to boundaries and things like that, because Saturn in Aries, Saturn generally is going to tell us about boundaries, because, he is very much about that. So are our boundaries in place? Are they too loose? Do we need to, not have such intense boundaries? What is it for us? And it could be that, we haven't got boundaries in place, and therefore our attention is going kind of away from our own expression in terms of that Leo regality that we need to embody, as well as the sovereign self of Aries. And it's more about, we've been people pleasing, so we've been a bit slack with the boundaries. Well, okay, that could be revealed to us with what Neptune is showing us, and of course what our intuition is telling us, because it's very intuitive when we go into the Neptune vibes. We need to be mindful of the shadow aspects, but also it's about connecting to our intuition more. So we understand intuitively, okay, yes, I might need to put myself forward more in terms of my expression. I might need to have more courage to put a boundary in place, because Saturn's also showing me, along with Neptune, that maybe I've not been so good at that. So it can be a minor challenge, because of course it's change, and it is about understanding, this has to come from the self. If we look at the cardinal energy, just in the case of that sesquisquare, the cardinal energy is coming from Aries. So it's driven by the self and the warrior self that is within, the sovereignty that's within. Okay. So we need to have that in mind. And of course, this square between Mercury and Juno and Poseidon, who are close together in Scorpio, of course, things are coming up from the depths of the metaphorical ocean, if you like. And the commitment with Juno there, the commitment to our path and the commitment to the depth, Scorpio energy, of what is being trudged up, that can also be quite challenging, because we're seeing things that were kind of buried underneath. So both of those at play, with Neptune and Poseidon, and there is of course that link there, Neptune, Poseidon, is showing us things from the deep, deep part, okay, of ourselves and the soul. So we need to understand that's coming up for a reason, to help guide us, but it can feel challenging. And it can also be saying that, things with soul contracts are coming up to the surface to be understood, because of course we need to learn certain things from these soul contracts, particularly past life ones, because of closing out patterns. So that's helping us understand that as well. Okay, and I mentioned soul contracts because we've got a yod here, and I'll come on to that in a moment. Okay, but let's look at opposition energy. So Mercury is opposite Pallas, who is in Aquarius along with Pluto, of course. Pallas is an asteroid that can also symbolize the warrior spirit within, the fighter within. Okay. Think of Pallas Athena, goddess Athena. But there is also this need to strategize and plan as part of that. So it's a very strategic warrior energy. So in opposition, there can be some resistance to planning ahead or to actually needing to strategize. And that's because potentially it could feel overwhelming to do so because of everything that's coming up. And that's why I said just now about being kind to ourselves, you know, not being too hard on ourselves, because all of this is part of our journey. We're learning, we are discovering more and more all the time. We're always evolving in that way, and our soul is becoming more wise as a result. But we need to recognize that if we have to strategize in terms of the new reality that we want to experience, because Pallas is in Aquarius, and this is where Pluto is, this is the age of Aquarius. And by the way, Pallas is 20 degrees at this point. Pluto is 2 degrees. There is mirroring here between the two, just FYI. And they're both at the same minutes there, 45. That's really interesting. And 4 and 5 reduces, well, 45 reduces to a 9. Okay. And that is definitely about releasing. So there could be releasing of resistance to the need to strategize for the new reality that we want to experience. And if there is anything that's kind of limiting ourselves in terms of our expression, and we don't feel brave enough, we don't feel courageous enough to do it, that's where the resistance can be. But what we need to bear in mind is this is about the new reality we want to create. So it's about working through the resistance. The other opposition energy that can tie into that because of shadow aspects is Uranus, 0 degrees of Gemini, because he's now in a new sign, and Lilith, 0 degrees of Sagittarius. Okay, so there's been a lot of shifts going on, a lot of energetic shifts going on. The Schumann resonance has been off the chart. There's been lots and lots going on. Okay, and because we're all closing out cycles as well, collectively there is a massive purge going on. Okay, so energetic shifts, it's major. Okay, and there can be sudden changes going on with Uranus. Okay, so there might have been sudden changes when he ingressed into the sign of Gemini, because that was kind of marking another point of mass awakenings. So here we've got, you know, this opposition particularly is direct, same degrees, and they're at the start of a cycle, obviously, and it's mutable energy. Gemini and Sag are both mutable signs. And what are the other mutable signs? Virgo and Pisces, and that's where the North Node and South Node both are at the moment. So it is pivotal to the path. Okay, we've got to detach from the past and we need to focus on the path forward. Detach from the past path and focus on the path forward. And also we need to bear in mind that, you know, there is an element of curiosity here of what we're discovering, and we are learning. It's motivating us and inspiring us to continue on the path, because we're finding out more about ourselves, even if it can feel challenging. But that in itself is going to inspire us further, because it's allowing us to become who we are. And the opposition, particularly with the shifts, the sudden changes, the mass awakenings and things like that, it's shaking up the foundation and it's shaking up the shadows. Okay, it's bringing the shadows to light. And this is also going hand in hand with what Neptune is doing by lifting the veil. So the shadow aspects are being brought to light, and that is enabling us to learn, understand what it is we truly desire, and to address any shadow aspects in our own life that we need to, that could pertain to fears, anxieties, worries, particularly, you know, when we look back at the Mercury retrograde itself, particularly where we might have been, and I keep wanting to say the word inhibiting. So where we might have been inhibiting ourselves in terms of our expression and putting ourselves forward, because maybe we've not believed in ourselves enough. So big shake-ups, I was going to say big shakes, big shake-ups, big shifts happening to really allow that stuff to come up, to be seen, and then we can understand, okay, right, I've got the memo. I understand I've been holding myself back because of this self-limiting belief that I had as a result of X, Y, and Z. And now this is being brought up right to my face. You know, it's being brought to the surface for attention, because I need to process it and heal it, gain the wisdom from it, heal it, move on. And that will enable me to then put myself forward. So it's understanding the root causes of a lot of this, because it's been under the surface. Again, Neptune is going to bring it up. Poseidon is trudging it up for us to see. Uranus is shaking it up. So it's all of it is working together in relation to, you know, this is the new reality going forward, and what is going with you on this journey, and what do we need to leave behind? Okay, so it can feel challenging, of course, but there is something that's harmonious here. Yay, you might be thinking, after all this challenging energy. But there is a trine that I've marked up here from Mercury across to Ceres in Aries. I want to say Ceres in Aries. Ceres in Aries. Okay. So again, that sovereign vibe of Aries. And Ceres is divine feminine energy, just like Pallas, okay? And there is expansive potential to Ceres as well. But essentially here, it's about planting the seeds of what we're trying to build, what we want to come to fruition, the harvest that we want to reap, you know, the effort we put in, and then we get the rewards back, what we're trying to plant for our future. And in Aries, that needs to be aligned with the sovereign path. So basically, believing in what we want enough to plant the seeds for the future we desire, not what other people desire for us. It's about what we desire. And okay, we've got Neptune and Saturn in retrograde in Aries, testing our sovereignty a bit. We've got Chiron in Aries, which is also testing our sovereignty, because we are healing our sovereignty as part of this. But recognize that when we understand who we are and what we are trying to build for our reality, we can then allow that expression to open up, or we can certainly find the courage with that belief in ourselves. You know, we need to kind of believe that we can achieve this, and that will then help build the courage. But equally, by us focusing during the retrograde on areas where we might need to find the courage to really embody that expression, that is going to serve us well in terms of what we're trying to plant. Because if we feel courageous about who we are and what we're trying to do, then we can do that with conviction, absolute conviction. This is what I want, and this is what I'm planting my metaphorical seeds in order to, you know, receive that harvest of my new reality. Okay, so that's working in harmony. Now let's come on to this yod. Okay, so the yod here, I've marked it up so it stands out for you to see as a white triangle. It is essentially a finger of God that is pointing towards something of focus in a chart. And it's made up of a sextile and two quincunxes. So the sextile is going from Venus in Gemini to Ceres in Aries, and it's pointing towards Juno and Poseidon. Okay, and we know that they're already in focus because of the square from Mercury, because of what's being trudged up. But the focus is on the commitment to what is being trudged up. And it's not only what Poseidon's doing, it's also what Neptune's doing. Okay, so even though Neptune is not in this yod, for example, that doesn't matter. It's about what is being shown to us and our commitment to the depth of what we are being shown in our own life and externally. Okay, use your discernment always with what you're being shown, especially when it comes to the new technology that is around at the moment. Okay, it's Mercury retrograde, it's Neptune retrograde. Use your discernment. So focus is on the commitment to what is being revealed. And the little side note is use your discernment with what's being revealed. Okay, and this is where the trusting of your intuition comes into play. To focus on that, underpinning it at the base, we have those seeds we're trying to plant based on our sovereignty. And we have the Venus values. Now, Venus will remind us of our worth. We need to actually own our worth and our values. So just like Ceres is saying in Aries, okay, I believe in myself, first house Aries, self. I believe in myself enough to put this, this, and this in action, to plant those metaphorical seeds, because I know I want my reality to be this way. And with Venus, it's saying, you know, and I know I'm worthy of receiving that reality. So in that respect, because I know what I'm worth, I know what reality I want to create for myself, I'm therefore open to understanding what is coming up for me to see, because that's part of my path as well. And it's going to enable me to pivot or release from things or put things in action, whatever might be shown to me, but always using your discernment. Okay. And Venus in Gemini, it feels to me that, of course, there's an inquisitive nature to Gemini, but, you know, there is also that connection to communication, and Mercury is obviously the point of focus also because of the retrograde. But I felt when I looked at this, there needs to be this logical approach. And certainly when it comes to our values, ensuring that, you know, as we're aligning with things, it's understanding, looking at things from maybe two perspectives and understanding, yeah, is that actually worth my time? Is it worth my energy? Is it worth my attention? Is it worth my love, to invest my energy in this any further? Or is it not? Is it in alignment with my values? Is it not? Is it in alignment with the seeds that I want to plant with Ceres in Aries? And is it in accordance with the depth of what's being shown to me? Okay, because that's being revealed to me. Is it in alignment? And then it's using discernment. But I mentioned soul contracts earlier because Juno, when I see Juno, it also does, for me, it relates to soul contracts as well, depending on what else might be shown. So we need to look at not only what is aligned for us on our path, but who is aligned for us on our path. And there could be deep Scorpio energy, deep soul contracts. They might also be hidden at this moment in time because of the scorpionic energy. Okay, so there could be soul contracts at play that might not be visible at this moment in time, that are part of the path forward and can assist with, I suppose, what we're trying to plant, what we're trying to achieve, as long as they are in alignment for us. Okay, and if they're soul contracts, then really it's part of our soul contract, so it is aligned for us at that time for however long it's meant to be. But needing to ensure that it's based on what we want, what we're trying to actually establish for our reality, and if that soul contract is aligned with that. Understanding the lessons from that, understanding what's coming up, what's being shown to us, but it could indicate that support that could be coming in to assist with the path forward. As long as there is discernment, and as long as there is that essence of, you know, the Venus vibe of knowing one's worth and understanding what it is that we want first and foremost, and then recognizing, okay, that soul contract, is that in alignment for me? Yes, absolutely. Brilliant. Okay, amazing support. If not, it might be something that needs to be released because it served its purpose, for example. But it just feels like there might be something hidden at this moment because of the scorpionic energy. And of course, it might be a soul contract that has already served its purpose. Okay, so there's just some remnants of it that has been trudged up from the depth of focus because it needs to be transformed or detached from, because perhaps it no longer aligns with the path forward. Okay, so it's whatever resonates, if anything at all. But essentially, it's about commitment to the path and what's being brought up to the surface for us to see, and is that in alignment with what we're trying to plant for our reality? Is it in alignment with our values? And do we want to invest our time in it? Do we want to invest our love? Do we want to invest our attention, etc., etc.? Okay, so that is the chart for when Mercury stationed retrograde. Okay, and then just to show you, and I did also share this on social media as well, but just to show you on here, of course, this is for the UK. The UK's natal chart in the centre there, and then what I've just shown you is the outer wheel. And just to show you that for the UK, this is happening in the first house of self. So big emphasis on the self and what we want. And it's about showing up for ourselves. It's, you know, having the courage to honor ourselves enough to show up for ourselves, to speak up for ourselves based on the reality that we want. Okay. And that's all I'll mention there. It's just to show you really the context of the house system. And here's the chart just to show you when Mercury stations direct in Leo, which will be happening on the 11th of August. So for us in the UK, it's going to happen at 8:30 in the morning. Okay, it'll be different times for other places in the world, but you can see there's 2 yods at play. And interestingly, because Ceres was at the base of one of the yods, well, the only yod in the other chart, but one of the yods here, okay, Ceres is still at the base, but Ceres is also the focus point of another yod. So there is a finger of God, a yod pointing at Ceres, and at the base of that one is the South Node in Virgo, and Poseidon, who is now with Vesta. Okay, so that's that kind of sacred flame energy. And this could also be pivotal to soul contracts because Juno is still there. So Poseidon might still be bringing stuff up relating to sacred flame energy that connects to soul contracts. Okay, past life, karmic soul contracts. Okay, past life soulmates. It could be things to do with that, but essentially what's still being brought up relating to the sacred flame energy and South Node detaching from expectations of how things should be, how things should look, you know, that perfectionist vibe, and understanding that, you know, by detaching from those things we can plant what we want. It might not look the way we expected it to look, but actually this is about alignment with the sovereign self and what we're trying to achieve. But Mercury is actually, you know, semi-square to the South Node and sesquisquare to the North Node in Pisces. So, you know, that challenge of, okay, yes, I've got to detach from the past. I need to focus on moving forward, the path forward, and it's the ethereal path forward, connecting more with the intuition, being guided by intuition. And the minor challenge, I guess, comes with what could have been revealed through the retrograde and really understanding, okay, perhaps I wasn't trusting my intuition enough, or maybe I wasn't listening to my intuition, and now I've got to really work in harmony with my intuition to move forward on the path. The trine is now with Neptune and Saturn, who was still retrograde in Aries, of course, at that point. And so what has been shown and certain lessons that would have happened during that time, if appropriate, okay, because everyone's on their own journey, is definitely helping that embodiment of expression and the courage. So perhaps being tested to the point where you have to stand up for yourself, going through these lessons where it's like, no, enough is enough. I've got to find the courage to speak up about this, or I need to just put myself out there. I need to show up as my true authentic self. And I've been shown that maybe I've not done that, and I need to do that. So that has helped, you know, what Neptune is revealing and what Saturn has been teaching is actually helping empower our expression at this point. And again, it's a theme because we know each day the astrology is going to change. It's going to, you know, the planets are going to move, the asteroids are going to move, and so on. So this is just a theme, you know, to say that, okay, the retrograde is over. There is a post-shadow phase, of course, at this point. But it's really about connecting in with what we've been shown and understanding that, yeah, we need to move forward on our path, trusting ourselves, trusting our intuition, and not relying on what other people have told us. Because maybe one of the things that we've learned is that, you know, we've had to trust what our intuition is telling us over and above other people's opinions. Okay, is what I will say with that one. There is opposition energy in Aquarius, and this time it's with Pluto. So yes, there might still be some resistance to the transformation that's going on because it is still part of the process. And there are still things that need to be done, it feels like, you know, with the path moving forward. But there is a sextile to Mars, who will be in Libra at that point, and also a sextile to Uranus. So it's definitely supporting change. And change is supporting our need to speak up and the courage to find ourselves and to embody that regal essence. Of course, we will be in Leo season at this point. So that's going to give us that soul essence support of the regality that we need to embody. Okay. And, you know, with Mars, about that action, to take action in a fair, balanced way. So understanding that the courage we can bring for that will facilitate it, but the cardinal energy there is Libra. So Mars, that inspiration within to take action from a fair, balanced place in order to get justice, okay, in our life generally, is inspiring us to have the courage to speak up, to stand up for ourselves, and to embody that true, authentic expression of who we are. And to basically, you know, be wearing that crown. I know that I attribute sovereignty to Aries because it is about the self and it is about the warrior self. But Leo is also that sovereign energy because it's that regal essence of being the king or queen of your own life. And it's really about owning that in a determined way because it's fixed energy. So being quite determined about that. This is me, this is who I am, and this is my soul expression. And I have that inner strength to really embody that and to put yourself out there to be seen, you know, to show up for yourself, basically. Okay. So that is what I have for you on that. Okay. As I say, the retrograde, that's going to go on for a few weeks. You know, it ends on the 11th of August and we've got the post-shadow phase. So the energy can still be a bit funky. We've got the other retrogrades going on. So, of course, the energy can feel like it's a bit more sluggish when that's going on. But, of course, retrogrades help us because we're meant to slow down and introspect. So whilst it may not be a time for full pal action, it's definitely a time for that strategizing, which is what came up in the first chart, and overcoming any resistance to that. Because we can see that with Mars in Libra at the point that Mercury stations direct in Leo, and that sextile to Mercury, it is driven by some action then from a fair place, from a balanced place, but understanding, of course, what's going to come up for us in the retrograde and what we might need to introspect on that we're already aware of. It's that time for us to really go within and understand, what do we need to look at, what do we need to review, what do we need to release, you know, and understanding what that is showing us, the knowledge that we're gaining from that. So how we're communicating with ourselves. Are we holding ourselves back in terms of our expression? Do we need to find the courage to say something? Do we need to find the courage to show up as our authentic soul self? And it's looking at all of those things. Okay, so I hope you have a really, really valuable introspection period and understanding that we've got, you know, Neptune and Saturn particularly showing us a lot at the moment. So it's about being kind to yourself and understanding that obviously what's being shown needs to kind of come out of the depth of what's being hidden, because we need to understand how that applies to us, what wisdom we need to gain, what do we need to release, why is that pattern coming up, is that a fear that's coming from, you know, childhood, is it something that's coming from a past life, what is coming up? If there are patterns coming up that you're noticing and you're kind of catching them in the moment, you're kind of saying, there's that thought again. Why is that coming up? And it's getting to the bottom of it all. So being open to that is part of this. And that is part of that yod, you know, with the pointing towards Juno and Poseidon, because it's about our commitment to what is being shown, and it's being open to what's being shown so that we can then plant the seeds of the reality that we're trying to create. But we need to address these things first, because of course, to embrace the new, we need to clear out the old. It's about freeing up that energetic space in that respect. And the shifts that are going on are calling for that. So any periods of discomfort and things like that is really just getting us to kind of move and to pivot in these areas, or to look at certain things. There's a saying, actually, I saw it a while ago and I can't remember it exactly, but it was something like, it's a message from God, and it's saying, I had to make you uncomfortable, otherwise you wouldn't have moved. And that's a very powerful message, because if we just felt comfortable with everything that's not aligned with us, we would never change, we would never evolve. So it is about understanding that we're needing to feel these things, we're needing to feel the discomfort in some respects, in order to prompt us to make the changes we need to, so that our path is then absolutely for us. But to get to that point, we've got to kind of wade through the gunk that's still in the cocoon, you know, where we are as a caterpillar, and we're trying to emerge as this beautiful butterfly. And we're still just getting through a bit of the gunk, because we've got to understand that that has been part of forming us into the butterfly. Okay, so it's part of our path. The challenging times is part of our journey, and we need to understand certain things in order to then evolve and, you know, present ourselves to the world as this beautiful, colourful butterfly. And you know, the liberation that comes from that as well is quite something. But it is a transformative process, and it's not easy for the caterpillar to actually get through that process, but it's worth it in the end. So that's what I'm trying to say with that. And also, whilst we're talking about that, because I also saw something else a while ago about the story of the butterfly, and you know, how that if somebody was to intervene with that, you know, to help the butterfly come out of the cocoon, that can actually be more harmful. So that's why, you know, the caterpillar has to go through all of that process on his or her own in order to emerge as that butterfly by themselves. And that is quite something, because this journey can feel very isolating to some. And, you know, I've been through periods of that myself. And then you actually understand why that needs to be the case. So just recognizing that there is a deeper meaning to it all, and that story of the butterfly is absolutely something that we can relate to, especially if we're going through periods of isolation, if we're going through periods of, you know, frustration that we can't seem to break out of a cycle, you know, for whatever reason. And it's possibly because there's still something we need to learn and understand. And once we've got that lesson in place from Saturn, you know, it's almost like the gate then opens, and we can, you know, be liberated in that way. So I know I went off on a tangent there, but that feels quite significant to mention it. And yeah, I just wish you all the best on your journey, of course, and during this introspective period, during all of these shifts that's going on, and just to understand, you know, the wisdom that's coming through. Even if you're not aware of it, your soul, your wisdom bank is understanding what's going on. And it's about connecting in with your intuition, connecting with your higher self, that divine source energy within, to guide you forward and to use your discernment with anything else. Okay. So sending you all the best, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks so much, and I'll see you soon.